I'm starting. Okay, we are live.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Hello, audience. I am Diksha, and I will be your host for this evening's talk. Crush the Google Summer Report. Joining me on the other hand is Mr. Vivek Nigam, a student of BIT Mesra and a former Google Summer of Code student at CERN. Thank you, Vivek, for joining with us.
Hi, Diksha. I'm very glad to be here amongst all the community and sharing my experience and answering their questions and everything. So that will be a great experience for
Okay.
me.
Yeah, so let's start this session. And I would also like to inform our audience that they can ask the questions. And if you have any doubts, any questions, just drop down in the live chat section. We will take that questions in the middle somewhere and also at the end for sure. So to
Yeah.
begin with the session, Vivek, I would like you to explain about open source to our audience. Like what is open source and how it is different from the closed source.
So this is a question which I get a lot from the community and the students around who are starting with open source. That what is open source and how should I get into it and what projects do I open source or how do I maintain my GitHub? All the questions have basically the same answer. That open source is uh, basically you develop the software and you put it out for the community and they help you to identify issues and improve your software, and in that process you make good contact with better developers than you, and some people might have a better insight on your product so they might also add in something. So all in all it improves the maintainability and the quality of a product when you open source it, and you have to do it the right way to like ensure maximum engagement from the community. That can be in a different question, but how it is different from closed source is the way you can see that uh, suppose uh, the closed source communities work in the way that they have the idea and they build the product amongst themselves. They share it amongst their company or the organization or the community, and you cannot interfere with it. You cannot see the source. They do not disclose the source, and they have pretty tight legal bounds also on the products on how you can use that and how you can distribute it. And open source is a bit liberal on that side, and you can like use the software for free. Most of the softwares are free, and when you talk about open source and closed source, most of the softwares are paid. So that's one big difference between closed and open source. And similarly, on the same lines, if you say that what products do we open source, it's the same answer. The ones which you want to improve, like which require the community engagement, those projects you should open source.
Okay, so as you say that open source is free, so why do people contribute to open source? I mean, like if we can generate revenue by the closed one,
Yeah.
then why should someone devote time to open source?
See, this is something which is very, I guess, uh, misleading to say that open source softwares are free of cost. Like you can use the software for free, but there are companies, like you have seen companies all around, even GitHub. You can use GitHub for free. But now when you go and try to upgrade the plan to a pro version or a team version, you see a paid pricing tag right there. So you can open source your projects and you people can use them for free. How you can monetize them is a very different aspect. You can either convert them into a SaaS model, which is a software as a service, which a lot of the companies do. Like for example, if I say that if people have heard about Heroku or any other software which we use to host our websites, for example, GitHub pages or anything, those websites, some of them are free to use and some of them require some money to be paid in order to unlock some features. So how you can uh, there are two things which in your question I see. The first thing is, why should I contribute to open source when it is completely we cannot generate any revenue? So from a contributor side, if I'm a contributor and I see I devote my time into open source, that is not more because of I can generate revenue. It's because I get to meet a lot of people who are more talented than me, and I can learn from them. So in other words, I'm generating a great community basically. Okay, so that is my revenue. I am meeting a good community of people who are interested in my project. So that's why I, as a contributor, go into open source. And if I, as a product owner, try to open source a project, so I would allow the users to go and use it for free for a lot of the part of the project. But if I need to monetize it, I'll have a different business model for it, right? I'll have something like a pro feature or subscribe feature to my project. Suppose if you want to use certain features, you need to subscribe to my product for a
Yeah.
monthly or yearly basis. So that's how I can monetize it, right?
Yeah.
So, and regarding the fact that if as a contributor, it's just because I get to meet a good community.
So, I can just assume that, in a layman, very layman language, that in the open source coding, you are putting out your code, you are also getting to know how good your code is as you go out to the community and also see the people doing
Yeah,
that work. So you
yeah,
can just uh, evaluate yourself that how good you are and what are your scopes of improvement, right?
yeah, definitely, definitely. I'd agree on that point.
Yeah. So, what do you think that many tech giants are migrating towards open source? What's your view on that?
Many tech giants are migrating towards open source, and the biggest reason, which I just talked about, is like you get a great community support. Okay, you have already suppose see, there are certain kinds of projects in open source, and I classify them into certain categories on my own. Suppose if you're talking about VS Code, okay, you might be familiar with VS Code. People who are watching this might be familiar with VS Code, and they know it's developed by Microsoft, right? Or maybe Microsoft bought it later. I'm not sure of the history about it, but currently it's owned by Microsoft. So even if VS Code is a free software to use, right? But you see a lot of the community using that software. So you want the customers to who are using your product to tell you what's wrong with your product and where you can improve, right? You would definitely want to talk to your customers. And the way it happens with closed source softwares is not very good. You have a feedback form, and then you go and tell the company that this is something wrong with my product, with your product, and you need to improve here or somewhere else, matlab, in some part of your product. But now when we're talking in developer terms, now we are talking about the product which the developers are using. They see the product, they work on it, and they know that if I click this button, something is happening behind the scenes, right? And they might know the solution to the same problem, which like and they can also identify if the problem is with their software particularly, or a lot of people are facing it. So if Microsoft tries to open source VS Code as it has done it, that improves VS Code as a software, right? That's why most of the tech giants are shifting towards and promoting open source, like Google, like Microsoft, and other companies also are trying. Like Samsung still doesn't have much of it in open source, but companies like Google, I'll say, if I say Microsoft, these two are like competing with this open source. If we are talking about tech giants, so the main reason is that they get a very good community support, and there's also transparency in their product, which builds upon the trust in the community. So if I'm seeing a product and I'm seeing that I'm using VS Code to code a lot of my stuff, right? And suppose if I have some privacy concerns that maybe my code is being seen by someone, I don't know, right? Maybe
Yeah.
someone is monitoring my screen through the code, or maybe they're uploading the code somewhere, so they can copy what I'm using. So that is a privacy concern which I might have as a developer. So if you're talking particularly about VS Code, it gives us transparency when we have open source code, right? We can, if we are so much concerned about it, we can go and just directly see where the a text editor file is, and we can see if it is copying a code somewhere else. Same happened with Arogya Setu some time back. People were having privacy concerns regarding Arogya Setu, that it's tracking our location and everything. So the government said that okay, if you are so concerned, let us open source the project. Okay, so now it's open source, and now you can go and see the source code. And if you are interested enough, you can find out if it has some privacy concerns or not. So these two are the main factors which I believe that the reason why tech giants are shifting towards open source. And not all the products are open source, only some of them which are maybe for scientific reasons, maybe they are for the community itself, which is using it, like the developer community, or maybe there are the softwares which are for posterity, right? Like suppose if it's a coding language like TypeScript, which Microsoft has developed, they are open sourcing it because maybe after 50 years Microsoft isn't there. So suppose in a scenario, but still TypeScript might be there. So who would own that? How will it be run after that? Will TypeScript die after that? No, I don't think so. It shouldn't, because a lot of softwares have been built in TypeScript till then. Right. Same goes with Python or any other language which is open source right now. So these three are the main reasons which I think why people open source their projects and why tech giants are shifting towards open source.
Okay, so how is it helping the developers in the developer from developers perspective? How is it helping them? Like, what's your take on that?
How is it helping them? Like the open sourcing of projects, like the companies which
Yes.
are open sourcing the projects, how it's helping developers. Okay. So, see, I work with examples much better. So I'll say, suppose if I am working with React JS, suppose most of the people might have heard the name React JS. If they haven't heard, like, if you have heard, like, you might have heard about Python, right? So if I'm working with Python, and suppose I am working with a command which was introduced in the last update, and that command doesn't work on my system. Now, whom who am I to concern about it? Like, am I the culprit here if I am not using it correctly, or is the developer who wrote that command maybe missed out something? Okay, or is it breaking on particularly my kind of system? Suppose if I'm using Linux software, so maybe it's breaking on my system, particularly that particular Linux system. So what I'll do is I'll go onto the GitHub repo and I'll open an issue, and now we'll have a discussion over it. The whole community is going to engage on it, and it will have a discussion on it that no, it's particularly your problem, or someone will say, okay, I'm also having this problem. So you empathize with them, and then you go and finally someone will from the community itself who developed the product might respond to you and say that okay, we found this bug and we might fix it in the next release. So now you think that you first of all you get a sense of confidence that yes, I wasn't wrong in my place, I did my best, and now the thing will be improved for a million other users just because of my one comment, my one issue. Like opening one issue helped a lot of like users which were using the product. So as a developer, I'd say I prefer open source because the resolutions are pretty quick in that. Sometimes, most of the times, resolutions are quick because people are enthusiastic about open source, at least right now, in this time zone, in this time, in 2020, at least when we're working from home and people are just sitting on their laptops, and a lot of people are shifting towards the online stuff. So open source projects have been rising recently, and I have been monitoring my LinkedIn in the last 8 months, and it's flooded with open source projects. And meanwhile, I was in GSoC also, so got engaged much more.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have a question. I will just take a quick question from the YouTube. Someone
Yeah.
is asking GitHub versus GitLab.
GitHub versus GitLab. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Some PewDiePie P is asking.
yeah.
Okay. So GitHub versus GitLab. See, I personally favor GitHub because maybe I'm much more aware about how it works. So maybe I'm not the right person to particularly ask about GitHub versus GitLab. It's just the interface and some other features which GitLab provides and some features which GitHub provides. So it's particularly depending on which organization you're contributing to and what they use as a version control system. See, they basically use Git underneath it. Okay, the system of working is the same, most like for most of the part, but for Git and GitLab, some features over the top are different, and I personally prefer GitHub over GitLab, just because I am more familiar with the environment there.
Okay. So now coming to your GSoC part, can you explain to our audience what exactly is Google Summer of Code?
Okay, so this, I guess, if the audience is here and they're listening to this talk for the past 15 minutes, they might be well aware if this talk is for them, and they might be aware what in definition GSoC is, right? I would like to go a bit off definition, or maybe not exactly at the definition what Google provides for GSoC. I'd say that how I define GSoC is like it's a party, and you walk in
Oh,
and you make some friends, and then they last for a life, and that experience lasts for a lifetime. So that's how I define GSoC, because it's definitely not an internship where you are told that you have to do this work and half of the work is already done. So you just complete this much target and you'll get a promotion or you get a PPO. It's not like that. It's not close to that. And it's definitely not just a program in which you enroll and then things go haywire later on. So it's somewhere between that. It's not particularly an internship. It's not particularly just a program. Yeah, Google defines it as a program because they started it as the way to promote open source. It started around 15 years ago, 15 to 16 years ago, right? And then, not, yeah, I guess they are running for the 17th season, right? This year, 2021. So it started a while back. So, and then that time, open source wasn't very much famous, right? Open source became famous in the last few years when people started connecting to the world. Okay, now GitHub is something. Now like open source something for me was kind of um, a distant thing for me when I was young, and like even in my first year, I didn't know how to use Git. I never knew what GitHub was. So even a person starting in first year in 2017, I never knew what GitHub or how Git works. And my friends were some of my friends knew how it worked. So I'd say the awareness is much more now. So at Google, when it started, GSoC, it started as a program where you apply to the organizations which are there, and then when you get selected, when your proposal gets selected, you work with them closely for approximately 4 months till last year. Now the pattern has been changed completely, which I'll definitely talk about in this. And I guess we should talk about that thing. So now it's about like 3.5 months, I guess 3 months, which you'll work with them. So, and then maybe you will be building something new. Maybe you will be improving something which is already present, or maybe you will work with them closely on improving or adding some new features to the product they already have, right? So this is what GSoC is all about, and it's mostly software based. It's not hardware based much. Yeah, you may use, if suppose if you are into some hard company which deals with hardware, you might have to test it on your hardware. But I guess most of the like around 90% companies, 95% companies have mostly the software part, and you have to submit the code online. So that is pretty much what GSoC is, and it has evaluations in between. So it's a 360-degree evaluation. You evaluate your mentor evaluates you. So it's not like you are my boss, so I cannot say anything against you, right? If you feel that your mentor is not up to the mark, you can say that, yeah, he is lacking somewhere. Or if the mentor says that the student is not up to the mark, he can give him a below average rating or something like that. So it's a 360-degree evaluation. It's not that I'm directing you and you have to do it. Okay, you don't have to think upon what you're doing. For me, GSoC was completely thinking based because my project was like that, which we'll maybe talk about in the last, what my project was and how I handled it. And as I said, it's like a party. You walk in, you make memories which will last a lifetime. So
that's a lifetime
it,
experience.
yeah. If you want to exactly see the definition what GSoC is, you can anytime log onto a website. They have very detailed documentation and guides for that. So that's about what GSoC was.
Yeah. So, what is the eligibility criteria for GSoC, and like, can an absolute beginner can participate in it? If not, how familiar
Okay.
he or she should be with
So
concept of programming.
your your voice was lagging. Can you repeat the question once again?
Okay, so I was asking, what is the eligibility criteria for GSoC? Like, can an absolute beginner participate? And also, if not, how familiar they should be with the concepts of programming?
Okay. So see, there are two parts to this question. The first part is what is eligibility criteria? The second part is can an absolute beginner get into GSoC? So for the first part, I'll say that earlier it was confined to people who were in university, who joined a university, and it was not very much flexible in its approach because it took a lot of time. It took around 3 months to 4 months of your dedicated time, and you had to devote more than 30 hours a week. Now, since the change pattern, you like they have um, made the criteria more flexible. You can be in college, master's, PhD, or any program which is after your school. You can either be in a licensed boot camp also. Like if you joined a coding boot camp and it's licensed somewhere, you can also apply for GSoC. And even the final year students can apply for GSoC. There's a time frame which is given on the website, which you can see if you fall in that time frame and you're graduating from your college. So you can also participate in GSoC. So it's much more flexible than before. So if the first to final year students are watching this, you are eligible anyhow. So that is about the criteria for eligibility. And of course, you have to be 18 years and above, and you have to show some legal proof for being enrolled in a program like that, or in a university or in a college. So that was about the eligibility criteria, which is very basic now. There is not much to think about it. If you are in college, go for it if you wish. And for the absolute beginner part, this is something which people are very unaware of, that if they are an absolute beginner or not. So this is something which I even felt when I started looking for organizations and wanted to go into GSoC. That do I know enough to get into GSoC? So I'll say that how would you define an absolute beginner? I'll ask you, Diksha, how would you define an absolute beginner? Do you define it as a freshman, or someone who has no coding experience, or someone who is like new to software and web development and maybe he knows data structures and algorithms, or he knows how to code in particular language but he doesn't know how to develop something from scratch? Or how would or would you say an absolute beginner as someone who is new to open source? Like how would you define who is an
I
absolute
will
beginner?
say that, if someone is taking engineering and especially computer science and the coding branches, so
Mhm.
obviously they coding, like you have coding subjects from 12th. So I won't say that they don't know coding and they're completely noob in coding. I won't say that, but I will say absolute beginner in terms is like, you know coding, you know programming, like you mentioned, you know how to develop, but it's just that you are unaware to the situation. Like, you know how to do things, you know how to build things, but you are unaware of the situation, how it
Mhm.
happens in, for example. And then you feel like, okay, I am new, I am beginner, and what to do. So that's what I feel is an absolute beginner. Because yeah, if you go somewhere, what I feel is, you go somewhere, there will be someone better than you and someone who knows
Yeah,
less, and
yeah,
someone on equal with you. So that is nothing, something called absolute beginner, but it
yeah.
we can according to the situations. That's what I feel.
Okay. So what you said, that if someone knows how to develop something, they are not an absolute beginner. So
Yeah.
I would classify them as an absolute beginner. They might be unaware of how open source works and how GSoC works. So they are like not much aware about GSoC, but they're in no means an absolute beginner. But
Yes.
I would target an absolute beginner here, and I would say that an absolute beginner would be someone who is starting out, maybe a freshman who is in first year. They know some coding, they
Yes.
have some coding experience through their courses, which are present. So they know how to write the code, but
Yeah.
might be they're unaware of how to write good code or how to write code in a particular fashion, which is accepted by the community or something like that, which
Exactly.
that becomes
Exactly.
daunting for most of the people who are entering into open source. That is my code good enough? Am I not using
Yes.
just some hacks to just complete the assignment, or my code is like worth something? So what I personally saw in the community is a lot of the people who are considered good coders, they have super strong fundamentals when they are working with their code, right? So suppose if they are working with some object-oriented language, if people are aware of object-oriented language, if this term is new, if you're using Python, Java, C++, any new JavaScript, any new language, it's all object-oriented. So if you're using that kind of language, so if you are writing everything in a single function, right? Your code is a mess now. Now you need to put it in different parts. If you know this much, you are like a bit up than an absolute beginner already. So I'll say that if you are starting out, see exactly for GSoC particularly, there are a lot of organizations who have projects which are not meant for absolute beginners who are at this stage that you just have started to code. Okay, there then this might be like intimidating for you, overwhelming for you when you enter that realm and you see the projects whose title you cannot understand, right? It happened with me when I saw the projects in my first year. I couldn't understand what the title even means. I didn't knew what JSON was. I didn't knew how to
This
write.
sometimes happens with me also.
Yeah.
It happens
So
with
I
me
never
too.
knew how to like approach the problem which is there. The first thing which I would say that people who are unaware, okay, we're classifying into two parts. First, people who are unaware of how GSoC works or how should they go about, and second are the people who are starting out with coding and have a will to go or participate in a big program like Google Summer of Code. Okay, so I if the time allows, I'll try to summarize both of them. So the first part is that you are very new to coding, you don't know much about it, and you are just starting out with different and like experimenting with different languages and which one you do you like or which one are you comfortable with. So for that, I'd say focus on the fundamentals, like the functions, classes, objects, like all these data types, and how do you define data types, use data types, and what are the syntax and the rules for a particular language. Because when you're going into an organization and you see the title, and they might have given you a link below where this issue has been addressed and which part of their code this issue needs to be fixed. They might have given for a new and easy project, which they mark as easy. So you go there and you don't know the fundamentals of programming, you'll be completely bashed out of the space. Like you'll see that I cannot even understand how this for loop is even working, because there are different kinds of for loop which people use. And like even for loops are not just a single syntax, right? In different languages there are different syntax, and then in a single language also there are three or four types of for loops
But
which
the
people use.
concept is same that it is used for looping. The
Yeah,
concept is in the
you should know that
looping.
it is used for looping. It's
Yeah.
looping somehow. You don't know the syntax
Yeah.
maybe of that language. You
Yeah.
should know that, okay, this code is working this way, and I know the fundamentals. I'll somehow figure out the syntax later. You should know at least that. And then these are the fundamentals of programming. You should at least know this. And then if you are aware with this, you should go ahead and learn the basics of software development, which I would say include like knowing the difference between knowing how to use different modules or libraries into your single code. Suppose you know how to write a Python code, and now you are trying to use some library which is suppose just for example, for converting the number of bytes into human readable form. Suppose it is given 10 lakh bytes, right? So it converting it into how many MBs or GBs or whatever KBs it is. So that might be a different module which someone has published online and you use it directly. You should know how to use it inside your code. So that is something which is a bit more than fundamentals. And then you should know at least, if you are into web dev or software dev, you should know how HTML tags and CSS works, because CSS is basically common throughout the coding realm. If even if you're working with Flutter, even if you're working with JavaScript, even if you're working with simple HTML, CSS, vanilla JavaScript kind of stuff, CSS is a must because no one likes a poor UI, right? Even if you're building something, your UI must be at least bearable, not if not even up to the mark, but should be bearable. Third is like you should know how to write and frame logic on your own. So you should not rely on completely how the pre-built functions are in there, but you should know how to write some logic on your own. Sometimes you will need that, definitely. So that is something which is into software development. And then if once you are done with this, you should go and experiment how you can use APIs which are available, and you should know what APIs are, how they are used. So these are something which is a comprehensive list which you can go through. But for a freshman, for someone who is in first year or going into second year, I say you should focus on your fundamentals more. And at this point of time, if you are in first year, you should focus on your fundamentals if you aren't aware of it. If you're in second year, I'd say you can try for GSoC, but if you aren't selected, don't be like hopeless about it. You can just try next year again and use that time of 1 year to improve your fundamentals. If someone is in third year, I'd say you may not be an absolute beginner if you are aiming for GSoC. You might not be an absolute beginner if you are. I'm just presuming that, because if we consider everyone as a absolute beginner for like till fourth year, uh, defining the roadmap or the path for everyone would be so hard in this particular live stream. So if you are in third year and you don't know much about uh, open source, you should learn about how Linux systems work first, and second, you should know how you should be uploading your code onto GitHub, and how you can maintain a particular GitHub project, right? So any project of yours, you can start with that for practice. Suppose if you build some calculator in your second year, maybe with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, you can open source that completely on your GitHub profile, and you will at least know how things go around, right? So your question was if an absolute beginner can enter, right? I'd say absolute beginner is someone who is like a beginner. Any coder would remain absolute beginner if they are not practicing constantly. So if you're
Yes.
practicing consistently from right now, even, okay, you will be eligible for, yeah, you will be eligible to at least understand some of the stuff what is there in GSoC, right? If you are in second year or third year, or even fourth or fifth year, whatever, in PhD or masters, anywhere you are, and you are working with some software, and like you said, that people are just unaware. So first domain was that people are completely absolute beginners who don't know how to code. Second was they are unaware. So for the unaware part, I'd say that you go and have a single project of your own, open source. Try to read upon material on how to open source properly. There are a lot of texts, a lot of blogs which tell how to write a good README file, and how to use branches effectively, how to use like the workflow which is there present. If someone else wants to uh, contribute to a project, how should they go about it? Basically, which is the writing the contribution guidelines. So you can go about reading all those, and then you can definitely try getting into approaching the organizations for work, for working on their projects. This is about,
Yeah.
I say, what absolute beginner question, which is very ambiguous for me often, but I try to summarize it like that.
Yeah, I think you summarized beautifully. Like you just like it was you just broke down the whole code in functions, I will say. Small तो सबको समझ में आ जाएगा.
Yeah,
I will
I
rather
try to modularize it as much as possible, but for any more queries, people can reach out to me definitely if they still have
yeah.
any queries regarding this.
Yeah, we are having questions from about GSoC. So, okay, let's take one.
Yeah.
Someone's Siddhant Sarkar, he is asking, I want to contribute to aerospace research or Libre space in GSoC, but apart
Mhm.
from code, a lot of physics terms are visible that I don't understand. Do I need to learn physics too for such organizations?
Often not. I'd say often not, because even if we talk about Sun is working in like what quantum physics and something like in Large Hadron Colliders, and their main area of research is not software but physics, right? So for even if we talk about CERN even, so they had a lot of physics projects, but ultimately you'll be working on the softwares which support that research. So even in I don't know much about the LibreSpace organization which you're talking about, but I'd say that if you go through the projects and you find some physics term there, you might reach out to the mentors directly, which were there for the project, and you can clarify with them if do I need to study physics for this, or do I need to just know the coding part, which I am aware of. Okay, which is my domain. Physics is not my domain. You cannot learn physics in 3 months, man. For that, you
Yeah.
cannot just you cannot learn the whole thing which they have been studying for many years and then developed a single thing. You cannot just learn it in 3 months and expect to build something out of it, right? That would be really hard on your part if you're not doing anything else even. Then also it might be very hard to approach that way. So you just go out and ask the mentors if do you need to learn that particular physics concept. If they say yes, then best of luck. If they say no, then you can just focus on the coding part.
Yeah. So, okay, moving ahead. Like we all have heard that you should start creating PRs from the month of November itself. What's your take on this? This is regarding GSoC.
Hmm. So, see, I'd say if people are suggesting you to just go and make PRs in November, I'd say don't listen to them. Okay. Why they are maybe saying like that? Because see, you first I what I personally felt applying for GSoC once and then not getting selected and then applying the next year and getting selected. What I learned in that 1 year was, and after working into GSoC even, so that would be like more than like what more than 1.5 years. So what I'd say, first go and try to use a software which you are trying to contribute to. Okay. Once you use the software, and then after using that software, you find that you relate with their mission. Okay. You relate with what they're doing, what they're trying to improve in this community, and you feel strongly about it. Then you can go and approach the mentors and say that, okay, your software is doing really good right now, but I was just concerned about if I can maybe add this feature to this software, this particular feature. So suppose if you are using VS Code, suppose, okay, I'll be taking a very terrible example for this, but still just bear with me. There
Yeah.
was a video by Ben Award some time ago. He showed us the extension for stories in VS Code. Okay, so just an example. So maybe not everyone is liking stories in every other app, but still I'll take this example. Suppose if some developer was using VS Code and he got frustrated and he wanted to share his frustration through VS Code itself, to the VS Code community and the people who are using VS Code. And he went out to the VS Code people and said that maybe I want to add stories to it. So if they allow, which I don't know if they will, but if they allow, then you can open an issue and then you can start working on that particular thing and then you create the PR. It's not like you go just directly and see any issue and just create a PR. That would be so hard for you even. And I'll tell you something which most of people might miss, that the hard fact is the issues which are created on the repo, most of them are created by the people in the company themselves, and most of them are not for you to solve. Okay, as a student, most of them are assigned to some person inside the company or inside the community. You can target the issues which are saying good first issue particularly. They might label it as good first issue. Many of my projects even have good first issue tag, which I uh, like with my discretion I add that tag, that if a beginner would be able, who has not read much of my code, would be able to solve this or not. Suppose recently I was making a website and I have open sourced it, and I added an issue which says add a 404 page, right? So there was no 404 page in that website, and Gatsby, I was working with Gatsby JS, and it asks you to add a 404 page so that if someone lands on some other address which is not there, which route is not present, so you add that. So I added that issue. I could have solved that myself, but I thought that maybe I'd extend this to the community, and I added a good first issue tag. Within 2 hours, someone replied on that, and they said that, "Hey, Vivek, I would like to handle that." And I said, "Okay, go ahead." I could have done that very easily on my own because adding a 404 page was not that much of a task for me. But I said that okay, I would give a chance to the community and like see what they have got. And he built a very beautiful animated page, although it was not matching to the theme which I had in my mind for the website. But he's still working on that PR. And so the way he followed was he looked at my project, he looked at my website, and then he saw the issues and he found an issue which didn't require him to read much of the code base, which was a good first issue. And then he contacted me through the comments and said that I want to handle this. And then I replied, okay, go ahead with this. So then he started working on a PR. Okay, not directly that I he just came onto my GitHub repository and saw an issue, said good first issue. Okay, good. I'll be able to create a PR. So simple. That's not how it works. Because if you try to do that, might be your PR will just be hung there, not merged. So don't waste your time on that. Maybe. Okay, first go use the software, see what it's about, learn about the community, and then do it. Right. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's about it.
Okay, so let's take a question from the YouTube. Okay.
Mhm.
So there's Soumya Ranjan Mohapatro. He is asking, how do you present your topic to the organization registered under GSoC? What are the developers actually looking for? And would it be better if we choose from our projects they have, picking one on our own?
Okay, we have picking. Okay, so this is the same thing which I told, right? This is probably addresses the same thing, Soumya. So if you are approaching an organization, okay, is how to present a topic to okay. So most of them would have a topic registered already, and if the topic isn't registered there, if you don't see a topic there, and you're very well aware of the software, then only go and suggest something. I'd say that would have a more chance of your project idea being moved forward into their roadmap. And if not, you can just go and read about the project ideas because they have been working it on some months, and then after that only they write that project, and which they feel fit for the students to solve, right? So you can go there and just see that project ideas which are present like listed on the GSoC website. Or else, if you want to present your own idea, join their Slack channel, join their Gitter, join their any IRC which they are using. Probably most of them use Slack. Some of them use Mattermost. All these are just websites which you can go on to and check. Just check out Slack, Mattermost, Gitter. These are my favorite one is Slack, which I use personally, and which Sun was also using. So most of them you can join. If you aren't able to join, you might find email addresses of people. You can email them also. That I have been seeing on your project, and I want to add this particular thing to the project. Is it okay for me to add that? And how should I go about it? You should also ask them how should I go about it. So that's uh, for your question. If you have any further queries, you could ask me directly on LinkedIn or somewhere. I would be
Yeah.
like happy to clarify that.
Yeah. So moving ahead, Vivek, what kind of repo or organization should a beginner target?
Okay, I think my camera might die in some time, so I'll have to switch to
You can
another
put it
camera.
in chat.
Okay, okay, that might happen. So just heads up.
Because we have a
So
long line of questions.
yeah, I
So,
know, but I'll switch to different camera. Wait, that's
okay.
a different thing. Okay, so what kind of organizations do you target? Again, the same thing. There's no list particularly which I'd say I have that you should target these organizations because they're not sponsoring me for anything. So I wouldn't name any particular organization for that. You should go and target TensorFlow, or you should go and target Sun or Wishio particularly. So I'll not say that. But yeah, you go through the list of the GSoC organizations in the archive, and you can see all the work they're doing They have a particular section on their website which they have dedicated for GSoC, and they'll tell you in short what they're doing. And if you feel strongly about a particular organization, do approach that. Don't just go searching and finding and hunting for organizations just for the sake of GSoC. You'll definitely lose motivation soon enough, like sooner than you even think of. So, and motivation is a very big factor in completing GSoC, because there are sometimes deadlines which you will not think that you will be able to meet, but ultimately, if you're motivated enough, you will push yourself, and the mentors will also push you towards completing the project. Else, it might lack somewhere. So that is something.
Okay,
So I'd say
so
just focus on the
yeah.
product more than the
Oh,
organization.
yeah. So Akash Chetia is asking how to seek help from organizations while contributing.
How to?
How to seek help from organizations while contributing.
Same way. Just mail them, cold mail them 500 times maybe, spam their email accounts, whoever is maintaining the project, or just go. Or if you're working the issues way, you're going through a good first issue. Just add a comment there. It notifies the person who is maintaining the project. So that's how it goes. And regarding seeking help, I personally joined the Slack channel. So I was continuously in touch with the experts, Rushu experts, which were there, CERN, who were working with the project and who were the owners of the project and everything. So I was working with them, and it was pretty smooth for me regarding that. If an organization is using Slack, it's pretty smooth. Else, emails might take some time to reply, but you should just cold mail them regarding any of your doubts. They'll definitely reply. They probably must reply, I say.
Okay, we have Abhijit Biswal. He is asking, what organization should we aim to apply to? All popular organizations have a low selection ratio, while for the lesser known organizations, the mentors and tasks don't help much.
See, Abhijit, I'll say, see, this is a very pretty common question which people have, like which organization should you apply to? Everyone is asking the same thing. So popular organizations don't have a very low selection rate, man. It's not like that. If you go, they have a very high competition pool. They have a lot of applicant pool. So the applicant pool is so large that the competition is automatically a lot, and they have a limited number of slots. Like if they have 7 projects, they'll have 7 slots for it, right? Because one project is allotted to just one student. So that increases the competition. But uh, for, I'd say, I don't have any preference in particularly going into lesser known organizations or more known organizations. What matters for me is what the culture inside the organization is. If you are not getting help earlier, it's very hard if you'll get help later on. So that might be a red flag for you. If see, last time I applied to an organization, I won't name. If anyone wants, they can read my blog about it. I mentioned their name there. So I tried to contact them, but their reply came to me 5 days or 4 days before the proposal deadline. So how would I like how would I have relied on that, right? So that happens, and maybe I don't know what happened later on, who got selected or not, but that was a bummer for me. So I didn't. I believe if your mentor is good, who is helping you out, that would help you get a very better experience of GSoC than just having a very flashy organization or a very, you know, lesser known organization. That doesn't matter in the end, I guess. It matters that you have participated in a community in GSoC, and that you learned a lot from your mentors and learned a lot from your experience, your project which you were doing. So that, I guess, you should focus more on.
Yeah. So moving ahead, we have another question from Harshal Goyal. He is asking which project should we try to approach as beginners and how can we follow up their projects and present our ideas?
Presenting your idea is a different question, I guess. And how can you follow up on their project is the same way, cold mailing, man. Just cold mail them. Just see the project, see the mentor, get their mail, cold mail them. Done. That is the way. That is how you do it. That's how I did it. I sent I don't know how many mails, and then I got a reply from a very few of them. So that happens, and often you lose interest in the project after you getting 2 or 3 replies from some other organization, and you start working towards them, because you see you only get 5 weeks now. Okay, from the time the organizations are released to the time you have to submit a project, you get only 5 weeks. And in that 5 weeks, you have to understand the software, you have to understand how they work, you have to understand, you have to create a very good proposal to stand out of the lot and everything. So that 5 weeks becomes very less, and it goes very fast when you are working, when you are in college, or you are having other engagements also. So it becomes really hard to manage everything, right? So you should just cold mail them right now, maybe if on last year project, and ask if that was completed or not, and maybe if you want to add something to that project, if you liked it. You can also contribute to Ruscio, which I contributed. I maintain 2 repositories there. So if you wish to continue, and tech stack is very you say common, like it's React JS and it's Python and JavaScript and everything. So you can approach Ruscio people at CERN also for adding some features to what I did last time, like this time in 2020. So that's how it goes, man. You need to cold mail them.
Okay. Kavya Suri is asking, how should I go about understanding big open source code bases once I know the open source workflow?
Okay. So Kavi is here now finally. So Kavi, I would say that make VS Code your friend, because for beginners VS Code is really good while understanding good code bases. I understood very maybe with experiment. I understood this with experiment. I cloned the repository. I went onto the main file. I saw what all functions were used there. I just had a right click. There is an option which says show all occurrences, and then I went to click on that, and then I got where all that was defined, that particular function where it was used. So I started understanding the function bit by bit. Okay, I started. Suppose if you have to have a simple suppose if you have a, I don't say you take a very good big code base, you start with something, maybe a subset of their project, and you ask them that if I want to work on this particular thing, suppose if you are working with VLC, you want to improve their what do you say, time bar which is there below, which helps you seek time in a video, and you want to work on that, just contact them and say which part of your code base is dealing with this particular time seeker, right? So they'll maybe guide you towards the particular file, and then you start from that file, not from the main file, because the main files are written very sometimes are very messy when you have to write a like compile the whole project and everything, and they might have a lot of things which you can't understand. So but if you want to work on a particular segment, you go and ask the members of the community which file or which folder contains the code for this particular uh, component. So that's how you'll start. So you just pick one end, and then you grab everything, and then you move towards the center. Okay, it's like navigating inside a web. If you directly go and barge in there, you'll be stuck.
Yeah.
You'll never be able to figure out where, like, what string is pulling what. Start with a particular component, then dig your way in.
Okay. So, which organization is better to work with, according to you? A big one like TensorFlow with only one project, or comparatively small one with multiple projects?
Not much comments on that, because we have addressed this multiple times during this stream only. So for TensorFlow, see, I'll not say name matters. I'll say the ratio matters, right? If TensorFlow, particularly we are taking TensorFlow, if it's having only one project, and if there is an organization NumFocus, it is having 17 projects, right? Sure, you know basic math. You know where the ratio will be more, or where the chances of you getting selected will be more. But you also should take in consideration the fact that if there are a lot of slots open, there will be like that many times of 17 times more competition there. Might be 17 times more. I would not say that's an exact figure, but at max there will be 17 times more competition if there are 17 times more slots there, right? So you should focus more on building better contacts inside the community. In the end, that's going to help you stand out. Okay. So if you can communicate well, see, I told you it's a party, right? If you know the host, who is the host,
Another
you
party.
now you can own the party. Okay. You can stand beside the host and you know everyone now. Right. So it's exactly like a party. You should go and make friends inside the community and understand how they are, have a talk with them, discuss the code base with them. Don't just focus on if there is only one slot left, or if there are like 5 slots left. Don't focus much on that. If you are particularly interested in having TensorFlow on your resume, then it's a different story altogether. If you are very particular that I want sun on my resume, it should look good, then it's a different thing. Then you can particularly go and like target sun for like 1 or 2 years maybe till you get selected. Who knows? But if you are into like improving any software, you should focus on the software first. I'd say the product which they are offering. If you relate with that, go ahead. Doesn't matter if it's 1 slot or 5 slots.
Okay. Aditya Singh Sishodia, he is asking how to select the organization smartly from now, because the final list of organizations will come on the end of Jan 21. And should we stick to one organization after selecting it?
Okay, how to select? Okay, smartly. That's a very big takeaway here. How to select smartly? See, I'm not that smart actually to know how to select organizations smartly, because smart can have a very big domain, right? So I don't know how to select smartly, Aditya, but I'd say that you know if you know basic analysis, you can just go check out the archives and see which organizations have the tech stack which you are working on first. Second, how many times have they been selected consecutively? Third, how many slots do they offer for a particular year, right? So these three factors can help you in adding the smart factor in your intelligence in your selection procedure. So, and you can stick to one organization. Most of the people say that applying to 3 organizations and submitting 3 proposals is good. I'd say if you put your legs in 3 boats, you don't have 3 legs, first of all. And then, second, you might trip. You might not be able to finish at least even one of the proposals. So, if you are an insider inside the community, if you're applying for a second time, you know most of it, you can keep that organization as a backup and then apply to some other organization also. But if you're a beginner, I'd say focus completely on one proposal, make it the best proposal of your life, like add whatever you can to make it the best, right?
Yeah, Aditya is also asking how much community bonding plays a role in selection. Does your proposal and contributions are enough?
If you're talking about the community bonding period, which it starts after the selection, right? So if you say community bonding in the sense that your contacts inside the community, yeah, it helps a lot. It helps definitely a lot. Even if you have one contribution, okay, and you have good uh, communication inside the community, your chances to get selected are maybe much higher than the person who is just contributing from like for without communicating uh, for maybe 3 to 5 months. If you have just one contribution and you can communicate that yes, I am able to do your project, I will be able to do your project, because there are people who can code very well, but they are not so good in communicating with the mentors. They are not so good in communicating with the people who are there inside the community. Those students generally, as the mentors have told me, that those students generally become very dormant during the coding period, and that becomes a pain for the mentors to catch up. So you should bond with the community. That's what you are there for. Remember, it's a party. You cannot just
Yeah,
sit in a corner and take your drink and and you just like have your food and leave, right? You should
yeah.
talk to other people also, socialize.
Okay, so these were the questions that we have from our audience. Now we are almost at the end of our session. So my
Yep.
last question to you will be
Mhm.
an internship at a tech giant versus GSoC.
GSoC.
GSoC,
No,
right?
no doubt in that. GSoC. See, at a tech
Okay.
giant, suppose if I am inside in a fan company, right? My ideology is like in fan companies, you have a lot of people who are working on very high tech things, right? And you just entered the ecosystem. What would you achieve in 3 months? Right? It's very hard to achieve things in that such a big, uh, you say, organization. And generally in GSoC, the big organizations are also divided into smaller sub organizations, and you are working with 3 or 4 of the mentors. So it's much more easier to learn things faster and learn more things than a particular technology when you go into a very big company, right? So I'd prefer GSoC over a tech giant.
Okay. So at the end, I will like you to. People are asking how they can get connect with you. So if you can just share that through LinkedIn, through GitHub, anywhere, Facebook,
Okay,
Instagram.
I am on LinkedIn as Vivek Nigam only, and my handle would be Vivek Nigam 3003 everywhere. Uh, Not on Twitter, but on LinkedIn, on GitHub, on YouTube, everywhere it's like slash or at Vivek Nigam 3003. So you can connect to me on that and have any of your doubts clarified. I'm mostly active on LinkedIn, and you can check out my GitHub projects. And if you want to contribute, you can add like comment down if any issue exists there.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can send me the request right now. I'll probably try to accept it after the session maybe.
Yeah. So this was it. This was the questions. This was the conversation. Vivek, I hope you have enjoyed the questions as well as answering them.
Definitely.
After
Although
this,
most of them were about selecting organizations, and I would say that if please don't go into that trap of just getting into GSoC. GSoC is not a destination; it's a milestone in like becoming a better software developer, right? So don't just go into the trap of okay, GSoC is my destination. I need to prepare for GSoC. It's not IIT JEE. It's not any
yeah,
competitive exam, right? Don't prepare it for like that, because in India everything becomes highly competitive because of our population, right? And
yeah,
very less supply and very less demand and more supply, so it becomes highly competitive. So don't go into GSoC like that. Think of it as a milestone. Try to become a better software developer. Try to engage into open source more, and then have GSoC as a milestone in between that. Okay, GSoC came and I participated in it, and now I know much more better people in the community.
yeah. So thank you, Vivek. Thank you for joining with us. Thanks to our audience, and also stay tuned to the YouTube channel of DSC-Explore. We still have some more. And thank you, Vivek, for joining with us.
Thank
Stay.
you, Diksha. Thank you, Diksha, for having me here.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.